Okay, whenever you're ready.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Engineering Our Future podcast. Nicolai and here today again with Luis Duque. How are you doing, Luis?
I'm doing great. It's been a crazy couple of weeks. I think that's the last time we recorded something, but yeah, getting back into the back of swing. We just came back from vacation, and yeah, I'm excited about this topic. This is something that I struggle a lot with when I was first looking for jobs, and I think that's something that I wish I had a little more experience back then. But at the same time, I'm glad I lived through all of those steps of finding an internship as an international student and finally getting one in what I wanted to be doing. So I'm excited about this conversation and all the uh, tidbits of information you were going to share with us.
Oh yeah, I'm very excited to talk about internships, how to get one, why you should get one. But this topic kind of came about because of a recent experience that I had, and I got the great honor of going to the Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers convention here a few weeks ago, and it was in Anaheim. And I don't know how many thousands and thousands of students, but it felt at least over 10,000. It was wild. I honestly have never been in a setting like that in my professional career. And then I thought, man, how did I not know about this when I was in college? Like that would have been a lot more helpful to get an internship just right off the bat. But I'll share a little bit about that experience. But just to remind the listeners here that we've both shared our stories, and I was really lucky. I got an internship my freshman year at a decently sized local firm that ended up getting purchased by AECOM, which is huge. And I spent about 2.5 years in that internship. Then I realized that structures wasn't necessarily my forte, so I kept exploring. I got another internship that allowed me to do like a rotation every 2 weeks. We went from discipline to discipline, and that was a great experience. And actually, it's funny. Just last week, I was talking to somebody who works at that company still. I mean, this is almost 20 years ago, and I was sharing about how this internship experience was so good. He goes, "Oh, we still have that program." So I thought that was pretty cool to hear that 20 years later. And then my final internship, I worked for a geotechnical company just because I still didn't want to totally give up structures. I know geotech is somewhat related. They work a little closer together than some of the other disciplines, and so I was very, very lucky. I had 4 years of internships, and I actually worked throughout college. Even during the fall and spring semesters, yeah, maybe it was throttled back to like 8 to 10 hours a week, but that was my experience. And so because of that, I saw how it opened doors for me. So even before the ship convention, I always preached the importance of going out and getting an internship. However, then I go to this convention, and we'll just say there's 10,000 students there, and our company had a booth, and it was kind of like right in the middle of all the action. When you walk into this convention, it looked like that. I'm going to butcher it. Is it CNS, the big computer and technology convention in Vegas every year? That's probably not the right term, but
CES.
it reminded me of that. And you have
Yep.
all the banners up above, and you have the robots in the booths, and you have some of the electric vehicles on the floor. It was really cool. And so I go to my booth, or our booth, and we have about 15 to 20 employees there, and it's the calm before the storm. I thought, okay, this isn't too bad, and there's people here, but not too many. And all of a sudden, then everybody got let in, and before I knew it, we were surrounded by about, it felt like 150 to 200 students just lining up trying to get a speedy pre-screen where they basically gave their elevator pitch while we were scanning their resume, and if they seemed to hit some of the high points or the things that we needed, they moved, and we got them an interview. And then so I spent a few hours there, and then the rest of the convention I actually spent in this like 8 by 8 or 10 by 10 little square that had these shower curtains, blocking me from the other 500 interview booths that were in the room. So it was wild. Again, I've never experienced something like that, and then being on the interviewer side was really interesting. But I found, because we were hiring for more than just civil engineers, we were hiring electrical, mechanical, and all of that. When I was looking for civil, yes, the first thing I looked for was internships. That was definitely the first thing I looked for. If I couldn't find internships, I still was able to ask questions because I thought, okay, this person is going to work with me. I know the temperament we're looking for, the type of person we're looking for. So I still felt pretty good about doing the speedy pre-screening. But when a mechanical engineer would come to me and I don't have that background of what they need and what the mechanical engineers are looking for or how technical they need to be, so I have no idea if the GPA is, a huge factor or not, which honestly in the civil I rarely even look at the GPA, but that's a whole separate thing. Um, yeah, so I actually rated the internships or no internships a lot higher, and it kind of made me think of all of our, you know, uh, talent recruiters and HR and whoever's reviewing these things that are scanning them very quickly. They're looking for some keywords, but if they don't know your discipline really well, there are still a few factors that will weight a lot more heavily. And internships, I found, was such a big one. Now, I did do some interviews in the booth or in the little interview pod that did not have internships, and it was fine. They did fine, but I didn't see a whole lot of people getting past the pre-screening process if they didn't have an internship. And I just thought, man, we really need to be telling people stronger how important it is to get these internships. So anyway, so that was my experience. I spent about 12 hours in the interview pod. I spent a few hours on the floor. It was the fastest days I've experienced in a long time. Like, it just flew by so fast. I was exhausted. I think I went to bed at like 7:30 each night. I was just it was crazy. So anyway, so that was my experience. And through all of that, I thought, let's talk about internships. So can you remind us what your experience with internships was?
Yeah, so for me, it was a lot different because obviously, I'm an international student when I was in college. So I didn't have all the really opportunities to be like, work at any company basically, because I had some work permits to go through and some like permits and stuff to go through. So I think that hindered my like really a lot of the chances to get an internship because I was obviously less competitive, kind of the what we were talking about here in terms of like, do you have an internship or you don't? Trying to get that first internship is like one of the hardest things to do a lot of times, depending on where you live and like I guess depending on your career as well. But at the same time, I took that opportunity to just, and I've talked to these, I think in many episodes in the past, but just take the opportunity to like find something that was available to me. And at that time was cleaning furniture, cleaning bathrooms, cleaning the dorms at the university, fixing furniture, all that stuff. And I just kind of embraced that. And I think that's been something that I'm glad I had to go through all of that because once I got that first internship, I was more grateful to finally be doing something that I really enjoyed. And I think that the skills kind of translate a lot in that sense. And I think when I was able to get the first structural internship, which was after I got my master's, I tried to elaborate more on those skills. So let's say I was working in a team. So like how working in a team helped me become a more well versed employee in a sense. And I mean translate that to kind of my career. But I think that's kind of something that I recommend a lot, especially if you don't have an internship, if you are maybe don't have a lot of experience, taking the time to highlight those things that are important and the skills that maybe you don't have directly working in a structural engineering field or civil engineering field in general, taking these skills that maybe you earned through a class. Maybe you had a capstone class that I was working with teams and maybe you were leading the team or a portion of it. You had to keep notes, all that stuff. It's valuable experience that you're going to use at your full-time job eventually. So using those skills, putting them in the resume, like especially if you don't have anything. I mean, you get, I think, one page, maybe two, if you have a lot of stuff going on, to really highlight the best of you. So if you don't have a lot of work experience, maybe highlight more of like your classes, or if you volunteer with ASCE or Engineers Without Borders or anything. That way, you have information in there, not only for the sake of having information, but information that can be used by the recruiter or the person that is screening the resume to say, hey, they don't have an internship, but they are really involved in ASCE, Engineers Without Borders, all these organizations. They are the president of this chapter. They are always just trying to improve the group or whatever you're doing, and they can take that and say this person is going to be a great engineer or a great employee in general when we hire them or if we hire them. So taking those that information and putting them in the resume, I think is super important if you don't have anything. And then once you start getting that experience, you can start deleting them and moving them around and whatnot. But yeah, I didn't really have any meaningful really internships until I graduated with my master's. I worked for, again, in the dorms, just kind of because as an international student, you're kind of limited to basically working for the university. So that's what's available to me. I also work at the wastewater treatment plant as a student operator because it was managed by the university, and a couple of summer internships with a like display manufacturer doing like project management, which was really really interesting and helpful. And then I think the closest one was a like quality control technician doing a lot of concrete testing and traveling to site and all of that. So I didn't have a lot of like actual like structural engineering internship experience. But again, I took all the highlights of all of those experiences and put them in my resume. And I think that helped a lot. And I mean, obviously told that, especially when I talked to recruiters after the fact, either because I was hired or just conversations that we had later on. That information is very helpful. Like having nothing is worse than having just maybe information related to jobs that are not related, but you can translate the skills into those positions.
Yeah, I'm actually really glad you brought all of that up because I mean, yes, the ideal situation is you have an internship at a engineering company. But if I was interviewing or pre-screening a potential next intern, maybe they interned or maybe they're a junior and trying to get an internship for their senior year. If they had just worked, period, that still was better than somebody who had not worked at all, or did that during school. As far as benefits of internship, I think I hit that already pretty good. Of it helps you get a full time job, and so for those folks that I had at the convention that I interviewed, I think the ones that we were kind of put to like, all right, now we got to pair you with the actual hiring manager, and hey, the job is yours as long as the hiring manager is good. Maybe we have a second interview. The people that got that pretty much all had internships already, unless they were trying to get another internship. I'm talking about just for the incoming graduates, the full-time employees. They're starting their career. They pretty much all had an internship. So for me, that's one huge benefit of an internship. Another benefit that I actually personally realized was it helped me focus on what discipline I actually wanted to do. Because yes, there are classes that I enjoyed. I always wanted to design bridges. That was like my biggest goal in school. I did okay in the classes, but when I was in my structural internships, it just didn't click. Like it just didn't. My brain just did not get it. I just it struggled with it, and so the internship helped me to see that. And then I told you about that internship that had a rotation. Being able to go every 2 weeks to survey and construction management, transportation, land development. Uh, I don't know. There was like 6 or 7 groups that I spent time in. That was huge because then I was able to see, oh, maybe actually I kind of like the transportation side of things or the roadway design. I still didn't want to give up structures, and that's why I ended up going to do geotech for the final year and some months of my school. But it helped me fine tune and focus and narrow up like, what do I actually want to do? And give me real world examples of this is what engineers do on a daily basis. This is what I'm going to do in my career. Help me to see and then another benefit, and you can actually get this kind of in any job, but just learning how to be a professional, learning how to be a worker. Being a worker and being a student are very different. Student, you can have some flexible hours. You can do your homework at midnight if that's your thing. You can wake up late or schedule your classes so you don't have any classes until like 10, 11 a.m. Like it's just different. But being a responsible adult, being a responsible professional in the workplace, I was able to learn that for 4 years. Now I still was not the best entry level person coming in. I was still very immature, when I first started my career, but like I don't know, I still was at such an advantage with having those 4 years of internships. Uh, and then for me, and then I'll ask you if you see or have heard any other benefits for people you've talked to, but the last one for me was building my network early. I interned and I met this guy, and so this was like year 1 of my internship, so year 1 of 4. He ended up leaving that firm and he went to a different firm. But by the time I graduated, he knew me, and he actually is the one that gave me my only job offer. The market wasn't too great in 2008, and everything had kind of downturned by then, and a lot of my friends were just lucky to get jobs interviews, and here I got a job offer, and I really think that only happened because I met this person in my internship, and I was able to show him what I can do as an intern, and then I think he believed in me, and we had built that network already. So those are some rapid fire benefits that I've seen. Have you heard of any other benefits before we move on to how to get an internship?
Yeah, and I think that's a great point as well. Just a lot of times, especially these larger companies, interns are usually the people they want to hire. Like that's an easy ask. I mean, when you intern, you know this person, you know how they work, you know if they're gonna do a good job or not. It's an easy ask, an easy move to go, hey, you are an intern for the summer or maybe like long-term intern for 6 months to a year. Hey, do you want to come join us full time? I think that's the easiest path to getting a full-time job. And I think that's the only internship that I had. Well, a couple of them asked that question kind of towards the end, and I was like, no, we're relocating to a different state just because of family situation and whatnot. But at the company of Foothills, all the interns that we have had come across, most of them obviously they did a good job. They have to do a good job during the internship. They were asked to come as a full time, and I think since I got there were at least two that join us full time coming from the internships. um, Obviously, not everyone joins, but again, that's kind of the easiest path forward to make that transition into a full time job. One of the biggest benefits, I think, like you were saying, just growing the network. You get to know engineers, especially if you're a large company like Jacobs. You are maybe too overwhelmed to know everyone, but at least you know that who to ask, where to reach out if you need to have a question or anything. But after you leave Jacobs for the internship or any other big company for that matter, that stays in your resume. So when someone else comes and asks, "Hey, I worked for Jacobs um, 10 years ago. Let's connect," or something like that, the internship is a powerful, easy way to kind of grow the network. Obviously, LinkedIn nowadays is super powerful and can help grow the network super quickly if you're very active. But internship and getting exposed to that first career, like I said, being a student and being an employee is two separate things. That it's completely different mindset, and you have to have a different kind of attitude coming towards those. But again, internship, great opportunity to grow your network, great opportunity to just figure out, especially if you don't know what you're gonna do, like you did, in terms of, hey, what do I want to do in my career? Do I want to be a civil engineer? Do I want to do structures, transportation? Is an easy way, especially if you do it early on, maybe after the freshman year, if possible, sophomore year, where you still have a little time to like pivot and change careers. I think that's a great way to do it. Something I have here on my notes is applying the 5 hour rule. So during the internships, you have a lot of downtime a lot of times, especially if you're not maybe in the high season of, let's say, construction for us in structures. You may have a little downtime, or you may just want to do this outside of work and taking 5 hours each week to dive into a topic. So let's say you're working on a bridge and you are designing the girders, but you have never really designed a girder before, or you're struggling to find the solution to this particular challenge. Using the 5 hours, 1 hour a week for the 5 days in a week, I think that's an easy math and an easy time to, hey, I'm going to spend the first hour each day. I'm going to look information that I can find. I'm going to reach out to people. I'm trying to make the most out of this opportunity, especially if you have never done it before. Taking the time to proactively kind of ask questions and look for the answers before you're maybe put into the in the hot seat and ask about like a design challenge or something. I think it's super important. It's something I try to do a little bit, especially if I wasn't too busy. I don't like just sitting around uh, doing nothing for a while. I think that was kind of the case, especially at the beginning in Jacobs, where there wasn't a ton of work, but there was a lot to learn. Just coming from construction engineering to bridge design, like new design. I spent time just kind of learning the process and asking questions like where do we keep files, where do we have templates for design, like what is the process of designing the bridge from like beginning to end, and trying to find the answer myself based on that. So using that time, especially if you have a lot of downtime, I think it's can skyrocket your experience at an internship. I think that's something not a lot of people do it because they're afraid. Hey, I'm working for this. If I don't receive work from them, I'm gonna get in trouble. But especially, I mean, employers are busy, managers are busy, especially if you are again in the busy season of your work. But if you are putting the effort to again find ways to do something related to your job that's gonna improve your job, nobody's gonna be mad at that.
Hmm, nice. Well, how do we get internships? I guess right off the bat, you wanna have any ideas or share any tips that you've seen?
I think the biggest tip I've give people is you gotta knock a lot of doors before you get that first internship. You gotta ask around. You gotta send your resume. You gotta be creative when you're applying for internship. Um, if you don't get an answer, just call the company. I've did that a lot of times. Just find a phone and call the front desk. Like, who is the hiring manager for this position? Can I get on the phone with them? I sent my application. Did you guys receive it? What's the status of it? Like there's people a lot of times, especially students. I think that it's getting a little better, but I know in my age group, I was terrified of calling someone, picking up the phone and calling someone. So putting the effort like that stands out. And when I talked to Rachel a couple episodes ago on the podcast, we talked back in April during the Still conference. She That's kind of one of the things I say. I asked her this question. I was like, how do you how do you filter hundreds, maybe thousands of resumes that come through the portal or whatever the system is, and how do you like filter all of that and pull out the good ones? And and I think the short answer was like is really hard. I mean, there is no way you're gonna read on his resume and get the full picture of someone. And I think the average was like 6 seconds that a recruiter looks at the resume and decides, hey, this resume moves on to the second stage or just gets discarded. So if you don't capture the information with those first 6 seconds, you're gonna be in trouble. It's gonna be almost impossible to get a job at a big firm if you don't have an in, you don't have a your network, what we should be talking about here. So I guess the first thing is have a great resume, and having a great resume means not only having the experience, having the skills, having all of that, but actually drafting the resume in a way that is captivating and someone that sees it. Hey, this is different. I'm not seeing just text. I'm not just seeing black and white everywhere. It's kind of hard to read. um, Use different techniques. Maybe highlight words that you want the recruiter to focus on. Maybe have a two-sentence summary at the beginning with your main highlights of the resume. Things like that, I think, add a lot of value, and especially if you're sending the resume to the void and hoping that someone is going to get it, that maybe give you a little more chance to do that. But yeah, just be creative. Find ways to contact the recruit manager. Maybe find someone in the company that you can talk to. LinkedIn is a powerful tool. You can see a lot of times who works at these companies. Um, at the end of the day, I think getting a little creative is what's important, and it's kind of hard to be creative, but I think that's what makes the difference at the end of the day.
All right, so then it's really important on how to get an internship is like you said, your network, exposure, getting out there, so you can go to conventions, you can go to job fairs, go to the career fairs at your school. Uh, Hopefully, you know other civil engineers or other engineers, whoever you're talking to, and you can ask them questions about their company because some companies have really robust internship programs. I mean, I had 5 interns myself this summer. Now that was spread across different offices, but I love working with interns. I love getting them some experience and kind of pushing them a little bit, because for me, yes, it's nice to have somebody to help me do some work, but on the other side is it's almost like I get to see how they operate, and are they somebody I want to hire on, later. So I mean, when you're in your internship, I mean that could be another episode is um, when you're in your internship, do a good job. It's just people are rating you and judging you and evaluating you. Maybe is a better word to say. So yeah, I think just getting out there, getting your network, and talking to people. If your friends have internships, ask them if they have any internal openings. So lots of different ways to get it. But I love your tip about getting the resume ready, have your elevator pitch ready. Like, why do you want an internship? And if somebody says, "So I can make money," well, yeah, I know that that's important, but that's to me maybe not the right attitude for an internship. But, so I can learn about what my future career might be, having that prepared and being able to say that very quickly is going to be a big deal. So I'm sure there's plenty of things that we're not covering, but just off top of mind, these are, I think, some of the big ones to go. And you have to put yourself out there. I think that's another thing that you kind of mentioned is it kinda takes a little bit of guts to do that, and I know that I didn't like that. Honestly, my first internship, I just got lucky, it kinda got handed to me. Um, if I had to go and fight for it, boy, I mean, that would have maybe done a lot different career for me, and I just knew the right people. So, anyways, yeah, so put yourself out there, you're not gonna die, and, be bold, and people will also see that too, and that's pretty attractive in a young person, as somebody who's willing to take that bold step.
I'll add to that is nowadays it's so easy to have a what we call like presence online. Like you can have a great LinkedIn profile, people can find you. You can go a step forward and create a website, really simple. There are tons of free ways right now to do that, and that's an easy way to, especially if you put a website on your resume, which I do have my website on my resume, and it said like, hey, these person has their own website. Let's go check it out. And you start highlighting maybe some of the projects. Maybe you have a little more time to expand on some of these projects and some of these things that you do outside of work, maybe that um, are going to help you find that job. And you already captured their attention. 6 seconds have blown by. They're already on your website. They're already invested. Hey, these are my work experience. I have a podcast. I have a website. I do all of these things, volunteering and highlighting all that stuff. They're start clicking around, and if you design it in a way that it's easy to move around and find that information, you can capture them for 5 minutes, and that way, that's the most powerful way that I found to really get these jobs. And I created a website after I joined Foothills, and when I was doing the interviews, as I was kind of looking for a new job, all of them are like, "Hey, you have a website? That's pretty cool. Like, talk more about that." And like, they already, I know they were in the website. They already know they were already clicking around in all the pages, and that is a huge differentiator to just really be again kind of different to everyone else. If you have a resume that looks the same and you don't have maybe a link to at least your LinkedIn profile, um, you're going to start seeing that a lot of times it's going to be really hard to find that internship, especially if it's the first one, especially if you are maybe a sophomore in college who don't have a lot of experience either with work, maybe some of the more technical classes. I think having little things like that, a website or something else, is going to be an easy way to like really improve both your resume and your chances of getting that first job. And we can go hours talking about how to make a great resume. I think you being part of workshops and things like that. Maybe we should talk about something like that in the future. But another like small tip that's going to improve your resume tremendously is look at the company's website. Like, what are some of the keywords they use? Do they have a vision, a mission? Use those words in your resume, um, and you're gonna start capturing their attention a little faster and a little better, as well as you are showing them that you care about this company. You at least went through their website, look for them, and that's probably more than 80-90% people do when they're applying to jobs. They just send the same resume everywhere, and that's one of the worst things you can do.
So, how? I guess if you were to summarize or one final tip to close out the episode, what would you say?
I think the biggest thing you can do is again, having a great resume is important, regardless if you know someone, if you don't. But having a network that you can tap into and start asking questions like, "Hey, what does your job look like? What are some of the things your company does?" And especially if you actually have an interview, that's an easy way to really gather a lot of information. I actually did that with you. I called you after my first interview and said like, "Hey, what does Jacobs look like? Like, what are some of the things I should be looking out for?" And you can ask in terms of like benefits, all that stuff that is important as well. But just the culture in general. I think that's kind of what you're trying to do. The interview is as much of them learning about you as you learn about the company and making sure that's a good place to work on. So the biggest tip is just grow your network. All the jobs that I found after college have been through my network. I knew people at the company or someone that knew someone at the company, and you start creating that network and you getting your name out there per se, and that's an easy way to just find a job. The second one, resume, and be a little different when you apply. Either use your resume to be a little different, or do something different after you send the resume. Give them a call. I don't know. Create a website. I've seen people create a website specific for the position they're looking for, and they send it to the manager. So that just gives you a little more differentiation as before you get into the screening process, so you can get through that.
I would just kind of reiterate the be bold and put yourself out there. I hope that people listening feel the importance of it and how it could get you a foot in the door or not, or the lack of it prevents you from getting a foot in the door. So I hope the listeners take that away of like, okay, I need to do it. Even if it's just one summer, something with an internship is huge. And then if you can't get the internship, I love the advice of get something, get a job, get something where you have to go and do something beyond just school. And because there's a lot of soft skills that you're going to develop, there's a lot of professional skills you're going to develop. So anything is better than nothing, but hopefully you can get an internship. Uh, I mean, as always, listeners, reach out to us if you have questions specific to your journey, and we'd love to be able to guide and assist you. I know that those are great weeks for me when a few people will reach out and just ask for a little bit of follow up advice. So don't hesitate to do that, and I can't wait for our next episode.
Absolutely. And I want to add something quick, just came to mind. I am part of the student engagement committee for the Structural Engineering Institute of ASCE. And we are currently, as this episode comes out, we are currently looking for students to come to the conference. So we're giving scholarships, is a registration paid for, flight paid for, and a couple per diems for you to come to the conference. So it's a pretty sweet deal. We have over 60 positions, which is the most in any year in the past, which is tremendous. All possible by the Futures Fund donors of SEI. And I'm going to leave a link in the description. Reach out if you have any questions. Again, this is an opportunity, especially if you're interested in structural engineering. It's something you don't want to miss. It's the one of the best conferences there is for structural engineering. I may be a little biased. I've been going for over 10 years now, but it's incredible. So make sure you check out the link in the description, and hopefully we'll see you there. Thanks, Nicolai. And as always, let's continue engineering our field. If you really enjoyed this episode of the Engineering Future Podcast, you're going to love the content we have over our website at luisfelipeduque.com. You can find the link in the description of this episode, as well as the show notes at luisfelipeduque.com/podcast. Every episode comes packed a lot of links, a lot of information. So you can find all the show notes and all the information related to this episode over at luisfelipeduque.com/podcast. Thank you so much for coming back to this episode. Thank you, Jack Winters, for the music. And as always, let's continue engineering our future.